Welcome back to Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe. This is your host, Joe Davis, and it is great to be back with you. On today's episode, I've invited my friend Cleve Bosher to join us as we're going to be talking about buying collections. Cleve is a longtime dealer just like myself, and we're going to share some really funny stories about collections in the past, as well as some negotiating techniques and more. So hope you will enjoy. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome back, everyone. It is a great day here in the studio. Cleve, great to have you back. This is my good friend Cleve Bosher, and today, while he was in the area, I had to snag him so that we could talk about some collections. You know, it's one of my favorite topics to discuss: collection buying, purchasing, and then what all is in them. And so today I want to talk about some strategies for buying. I want to hear some stories about some stuff you've bought over the years. And, just hopefully we can share some things that will be helpful to everyone who listens. And so let's start off with your first collection, or first card you bought. How many years ago?
So I was buying packs in really 78, that with the script at the bottom, the baseball cards. That card is near and dear to me, that set, that top set. So that's really the first one. And I got some older ones even as a young kid through trading with older kids. But that particular year was definitely instrumental in my falling in love with collecting.
Yeah, so for me it was 76.
Okay.
That was my first year. Though I didn't get, I just got a taste of it in 76, really 77. When I have many childhood memories of, sorting numerically, sorting alphabetically, sorting by team. Those cards are not exact. If any of my old childhood cards are floating around, they're not in pristine condition anymore because they're pretty dog-eared from all the times I took them in and out of the pages. But I loved them, and to this day, 77 Topps, one of my all-time favorite sets because of that, because of the childhood memories. So you got into collecting, late 70s. So when did you first get the bug to be a reseller, to start buying for resale, not just to own them long term?
Right. So it was always a collector in the beginning. That was the mission. And as I had duplicates and was able to upgrade, of course, everything was raw. As I would focus on a particular set and I would upgrade the condition of an individual card, then I would I wasn't this guy that had 15 of one card. So I kept the best copy and everything else was for sale. And I was on eBay. I heard you saying earlier you were on eBay in 98. I was on in 99, January of 99. So almost.
I literally joined in December 2nd, 1998. That was a landmark day for us. Yeah. And so we got on about the same time.
We did. So eBay was a great outlet to buy and sell, and so it wasn't as a dealer or anything. It was just a collector upgrading his set.
Okay.
Basically.
So over the years, I know we've talked previously on one of my podcast episodes. We talked that you got really heavy into T206s. Now, when you started pursuing those, was it all about I know you had a near set. Was it all about building your set, or was it just buying accumulations to help with your set and then have more for resale, or did it just depend on the opportunity as it presented itself?
Yeah, I mean, early on, not a lot of people were into what was at the time called the dead guys era, so they weren't playing then, they weren't even alive then. And so I think McCord, Rube McCord was the last one to pass away out of the T206 set in 1980. But not a lot of people were into that set. And you could remember, I'm sure you remember, there were just piles of them. And you just go through them, and I could go through and pick out the rarer backs. I can remember going through piles and picking out all the cycles, picking out all the Tolstoys.
So, any Lennox backs in there?
No, but it's funny. I even interacted with 707 as a kid because I'd come across a larger lot and I had some duplicates. and he was interested. And I loved the backs. And he had a Lennox and a broadleaf. No, it was a Use It. A Lennox and a Use It. And at the time, because we didn't have all the data, he was considering them both sort of equal value, because we didn't know that at the time, because we didn't have the data, the Use It was far rarer.
Yeah.
You know. So I picked the wrong one, Joe. I
Yeah,
picked Lennox.
hey, you live and learn. Yeah, and for many of you, you're probably wondering, what language are y'all speaking right now?
Right.
So I want to get at this. This is our topic is collections, but while we're on the topic of T206s, share a little bit more about, there are a wide variety of backs, and that can help determine different backs are much scarcer than others. The Piedmonts are very common, the Sweet Capital are very common, and so share some of your knowledge on what are some of these scarcest backs for those listening who may be out there and they just had a find at a yard sale and they're wondering, do they have any rare backs? So
Right.
what are in some of your scarcity levels that you're aware of?
Sure. If it's a yard sale, the first pass is it legitimate?
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, but then beyond that, you look at the backs, there's 16 backs. And the rarest of the commonly issued backs, drum would be the rarest. And then, broadleaf 460, these are some of the Hindu, of course, Use It, is probably in there with a very, very low pop along with drum. But then if you count the Thai cob green back that only comes on the back of the red background cob, if you consider that a legitimate back,
Yeah.
which some do, some don't, then that's, very
Obviously,
rare. Yeah,
yes.
very rare as well. So it's fun, to play with the backs because there's so many, and it's a little bit of a history. You've got the American Tobacco Company issuing cards in all these branded packs, and so whether it's El Principe de Gales or Tolstoy, it's just fun, and it's funny. You talk about the pursuit of our passion, in cards. One story I was looking. So as far as the backs are concerned, I had ATS, which is a T206. ATZ was his last name, and I just happened to have a lot of backs, a lot of different backs in high grade. So I was looking for ATS cards with different. I had 10.
Wow.
10 ATS cards with different backs. And where I would have most of my collection up on the shelf in a box, the ATS cards stayed right in the desk drawer just because I loved looking at all those backs with the same front. And I think the lowest grade was a 4. So
Wow.
yeah, it was quite a back run. It would be very difficult to put that kind of run together today.
Yeah.
But I was looking for ATS cards, Googling, it's been over 10 years ago, and I found this site that mostly had china, on it. They were selling china dishes and plates, and then all of a sudden I run into these T206s via
Like
Google.
which one of these doesn't belong here?
Exactly. What are you doing
Wow.
selling these on a china site? But it was for antiquers,
Okay.
pickers, and so I looked it up. I'm wondering, where's this out of? Where would these be residing? And so they were in Roswell. So here I am in Marietta, and I find that this pile of cards,
right down the road.
right
basically.
down the road, lots and lots of T206s. So I go to it was an antique store. They also handled estates. And I walked in, and behind glass were all these little T206s up in stands, And so I asked about them. They said, "Oh, the owner's not here right now. He'll be back. I'll wait." And I asked him about them, and he said, we talked about them and how unique they were and beautiful. And he said, "Do you want to see the rest of them?" And so he had displayed a few, which was a lot. And then he ended up telling me that he'd found 860.
Wow.
And they were all lined up in a little tin that he still had just
That's insane.
stacked
What year
in
was
there.
this?
This was probably 10 or 11 years ago.
Wow, so not that long.
Not that long ago.
As far
Yeah.
as finds like that. I
Right.
mean, the public should have known that, that, like what they had.
It's fair. It's fair.
Wow. So,
Yes.
but an antique store ended up with them. That's
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to call any friends I have that run antiques or pawn shops or whatever and say, hey, when that collection of T206 comes in, give me a call. So I got to hear about this negotiation. So I'm sure
Well,
this was it.
he said, because I said, where did these come from? They were handling the estate, the belongings of a couple that had come in, and they were in a trunk. They were, on site, sifting through everything they had and helping them just with the stuff physically and determining what had value, what didn't, throwing much of it away. This trunk that they pulled out, the bottom had basically rotted out of it. So they almost threw it away. It was pretty light. They took a peek in it, and it had this tin, a metal tin in it. And that's where all the cards were stacked up inside. And there were a total of 860, and it was about split half and half T205 gold borders and T206 white borders. And then there were maybe 2 or 3 red border T210s. And that was the sum of it.
No Joe Jackson though, right?
No Joe Jackson. No. Probably one of the most expensive cards was the Ty Cobb T205 that ended up in a PSA 6
Wow.
holder. Yeah.
That is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, a 6 on the gold border is, that doesn't happen very often.
The gold borders were absolutely beautiful. In fact, most of the gold borders I'd handled were kind of rough.
Oh yeah, I think most of the ones I ever get, they're like a 2 or a 3 at best.
Right. The gold leaf around the edge, which was actually like a copper, that went around. That's why it turns green.
Right.
So those, are very susceptible to damage. But man, were they incredible looking coming out of that tin. So yeah.
So.
Oh, the negotiation.
Yeah, I got to hear this. So how good a deal? In hindsight, how good a deal did you get?
Oh, it was great. And the gentleman, we built a rapport over time, and eventually, because I couldn't bite it all off in one foul swoop.
Yeah.
And he was very generous, and like I said, we'd built a rapport and a good relationship. He said, I want a ton about these. Just take them with you, sell what you can, come back. This is what I need out of them, And so we were able to work out a great, deal for both of us.
Wow.
Because he was getting rid of a pile of assets, and I got a good deal. So,
Good. Yeah, my best T206 collection story doesn't rival that one, but I still remember it. A gentleman came in with a box of about 240, 250 of them. And this has probably been, it's been more than 10 years ago. This was probably 2013, 14 maybe. And he came in and he just asked me, he said, hey, are these real? And I was like, I was like, oh yeah, they're real. And so he said, well, what do I do? What do I do? And so we'd been a PSA dealer since 1998. So I said, well, you need to get the best ones graded for sure, and then we can help you sell them. And he was it was from his grandfather. He got them from his grandfather, or inherited them. And so I was trying to convince him of what the possibilities could be with grading. So we graded like the top 6 or 7. I remember there was a Cobb and I think a Mathewson, and so we got the first ones graded. Turnaround time was a lot quicker back then. Got them back really quickly, and then got them sold. And I remember because he didn't want to let them all go because he was unsure of what's the value, what am I doing, So I called him and I said, all right, and that was an early day in our consignment program. That was many years ago. And I called him. I said, all right, I owe you X number of thousands of dollars for whatever we had sold. And he's like, I'm bringing you everything. That he was just instant, like, I'm just going to bring it all. And then we had graded all the best ones, and then we ended up working out a purchase to buy the rest. But there were some really nice ones. I kick myself, like many that have gotten away over the years. I wish I had, I remember there were just some beauties, like some really nice gray 5 and 6 quality. And I was like, why didn't I just put up one or just a couple of them? But times were tough, and when you got a good collection, you're happy to sell it and make something on it and move on to the next one. But it was that was memorable because it's very rare. I think that's the only time I've ever had someone walk in and eventually sell me that many. You were talking about the different backs. I remember that the El Principe de Galles, sure I got that wrong, but that back, I remember someone came in with a notebook full of them years ago, and they were just wanting education, information, and I tried for like 2 years. I kept calling them like, hey, you ready to sell those? You ready to sell those? And no, we appreciate you helping us out with them. Now we know what we've got, and
Right.
and never graded them. They just wanted to make sure they were real, and so when it comes to collection buying, often what we do, as you know from helping us out and going, we're going to be, for those watching, we're going to be at a show together. We're going to be in Nashville coming up here at the end of February, but we often lead with consignment when it's a big collection. And it was so funny recently, I haven't even got to tell you about this collection we bought. The gentleman said, I don't want to grade anything, I just want to sell. And so I went and made a large purchase. And but I told some of the other team members when I got back, I said, it was really weird. I said, because almost every collection of that caliber, I always say, well, let's grade everything that's big, and then we'll make you an offer on the rest. But he didn't want to wait on grading; he just wanted to sell.
Sure.
And I said it was I had to like learn to recalculate my negotiations again because normally it's always like we're going to pull all the cream off the top
Right.
to make sure they get the most out of this.
Sure.
And so, but it's different when the ball is in my court and I'm having to go. There was like a Ryan rookie, and I'm like, well, I think it'll probably grade about a 4, but if I'm wrong and it's a 3, I got to be careful what I'm paying. And so I try to land, as close to what I think it'll be. And there was large quantities of some other 60s era cards, and same thing. There was some mantles with creases, and there was some errands, some that were nice, some not so much. So for us, our quote, if you call it a technique, it's not really a technique, it's just the way we like to serve clients who have a collection is we go through it. Let's pull out everything you should grade. Let's get it graded. Let's see what they grade. Then we'll know what market is. Then we can either sell it for them or make a more educated offer.
Sure.
Because until the stuff is graded, especially when you're talking about vintage, high grade vintage, hopefully, it's really hard to gauge what a fair offer is. And so, but we're different because, I have preached this technique, if you call it that, to industry conferences over the years. And I always tell other shop owners, and I'll say, if you can guarantee to get a piece of 10 out of 10 collections that come in your door, wouldn't you do it? Rather than maybe you get 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4. Because I remember one that got away from me years ago, and they just wanted to sell, or so they said, and I made an offer. Unfortunately, I was the first one to look at it. And it was if I remember, I offered them $65,000 for this collection. And they said, well, we want one other person to look at it, but we promise we'll get back to you and see if they offer more, we'll see if you can match it or beat it. And I'm like, okay, that sounds fair. Of course, did they ever call back? So, and what made me sick was I called them back when I didn't hear from them after a week, and I said, hey, I was waiting on that call back so I can come back. Oh, well, we found somebody else, and they said they'll give us a bunch up front and then work with us over time to see what we can get out of it. And I'm like, well, I would have done that in a heartbeat, but you said you wanted to. And so I learned then, I was like, from now on, I'm always going to lead with, let's get you the most out of this. We'll buy the quote leftover stuff. but that was a painful lesson. So have you ever had any big ones that got away?
I mean, I don't have the experience that you do in buying collections. Obviously, you start with you want everybody to be happy,
Right.
on both sides of the equation, which is true of every negotiation. So my problem is if it's tobacco, especially, the emotional piece,
Sure.
gets revved up, which is great for the other party.
Oh yeah, because and I'm the same way. When it's things I collect, as you know,
Yes.
you've sold me a lot of stuff over the years, and you're like, Joe really wants. I've bought you out of how many Disney collections and things over the years. So if it's things I really like, it's I'm not nearly as good a negotiator when I really want some of it for myself.
True, true. But knowing how you do it, I think it is such a terrific approach because it's, the fact that you come at it, in a neutral position, where at the end you both win, right? Let's get this, the big cards graded. Let's see what those grades are. That'll really help us, zero in on the value. And then let's list them, or you keep them, or whatever. I think that, just coming at it from a neutral position is super helpful and puts everybody at ease.
Right.
You both win in the end,
Right.
and that's where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, and when I talk about ones that got away, it's been a little over a year ago when you helped me look at the biggest one that got away. And so I really wish I had video of that in our mutual friend's garage when we looked through that collection. But we looked at the most expensive collection I'd ever been offered, and most incredible at that. And this was one where I ended up being wrong because I think originally this gentleman wanted $1 million or $1.2 million, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time looking through it, and it blew me away. And initially, because there was so much in it that I loved personally, there was all the Mickey Mouse and Ty Cobbs and so much cool stuff in it. My initial reaction was, I've got to find a way to get the money to do this. And then after spending 2 days on it, my son Josh helped me come to reality, and he was like, Dad, you're getting emotional, like you need to, and so he started helping me comp everything, and the challenge with this particular collection, as you know, there was, and I guess you can talk on this, there were so many things that were non-compable because they're one of a kind or one of two, and there wasn't much history, there was no sales data to look back at.
Right.
And that makes it really tough because you can either hit a home run or you can strike out.
Right.
Because, your perception of this rare, one-of-a-kind card from the 1900s, you and the seller might both think it's a $30,000 card, but then the general public thinks it's a $10,000 card.
Right.
And so that one, I ended up not. I tried the consignment approach, and we were this close, and then another buyer came in and made a really strong offer, and so I was happy for our mutual friend that sold it. But that shaped a lot of my buying habits in the past year because there were things I got excited about in that collection. So share some of the things you wished you had got in that collection.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. Your approach, you caught yourself, Josh helped you catch yourself.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you could argue that you lost to somebody who got slightly more emotional than you did.
Correct, because to our point, the eventual buyer wanted a lot of the stuff for his own collection, and he wasn't worried about resale.
Absolutely.
And apparently had a lot more funds than I did as well,
Well.
which is okay. but kudos to him for buying it.
Sure.
But yeah, that was a tough one. I can tell you acted as a consultant with me on that to look at it, and I wish I could quickly give listeners a snapshot of how do you deal with a 7-figure collection that is, and it's not a handful of cards. It's not like here's 10 cards that retail values, 1.2 million. It's it's boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. And there were so many incredible items in that. Like I remember the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson rookies. I think there were like 25 of them.
There were.
Pele rookies. There were countless Pele rookies and
Bobby Jones
rookies, a pile of them, and Jesse Owens rookies, like 50 of them or something. The Mickey Mouse rookie, Juncosa cards, a pile. It was an absolute. I'm going to stop talking because I'm just going to get sad remembering that one got away. But so let's say tomorrow I get offered another massive collection like that, and I say, "Hey, Cleve, I am busy, or I'm out of town. Could you go look at that for me, and tell me, is it worth paying 7 figures?" What would your approach be?
I think it's the same as you've outlined. You've got to figure out what can I make money with quickly, right? And that translates into what you called the cream earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What's on top that's going to help me get back, help recover the money that I've outlaid quickly, right? And then, we just talk about the other in a big bucket.
Right.
And what made that particular collection so unique is that there was 80% cream and 20% throw in at the end.
Right.
There were so many cards, you counted them. What were there, like 4,000 slabs?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that just graded cards.
Right.
And there were countless other raw cards and memorabilia and big stuff, So it's difficult to put your arms around all of that quickly. But I think the same method, if I'm outlaying this much money, how do I recover that in the shortest period of time? And then the rest becomes the profit.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you've just got to figure out where that line is and assigning it to what cards and what memorabilia or whatever the case is. So,
Yeah. I literally looked at a collection earlier today, much smaller in scale, but and it was similar to that. This seller had a handful of graded and high dollar cards, and I ran the numbers on that, and he pretty much wanted full retail for the good stuff. Then he was like, and here's a whole Zion case. It was raw cards, but like here's a whole, here's 500-600 more cards that are, $1, $2, $5 stuff.
right.
So he wanted like full retail for the best stuff, and he goes, and all the rest was a throw in. So I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Sure.
And so years ago, I used to teach something to people who were working with me, and I'd call it the reservoir approach, meaning that you don't have to make money on each purchase. Hopefully you make something, but as long as you're accumulating this reservoir of leftovers that you'll do something with eventually, you can buy 50 collections that you break even on and accumulate more, and now we have millions and millions of cards left over from those collections. And so over time, a lot of it's not going to be worth anything, but over time, some of it will. And we've, you go back 5 years later, and suddenly a rookie came out of something that's took him 3 years to blossom, and you're like, oh, well, there's 50 of these in here, and it was a throw-in.
Right.
So, I'm different in that sense because I had a friend years ago who was a competing store owner. He's retired now, but and so we would compete over collections a lot of times, and he only wanted the good stuff, and he didn't want the guy with a pickup truckload of stuff. He's like, no, bring me one handful. He had a smaller store, and he's like, I just want the stuff I can put out in my showcase, and so sometimes I would get the deals because I was like, I'll take all that stuff. I'll take it off of you. And one of my funniest moments was a local collection where someone called, and I think they wanted $2,500, whatever it was, and there was, a few boxes of good cards. This was years ago when things were cheaper. And the one thing that made the deal was he said, I'll do this, but you got to take the whole living room full of, and there was, like 100 3,200 count boxes that I had to, and so basically I was like his, sanitation worker and hauling it all, like haul all this out. And so I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
Sure.
So, so advice for new collectors who maybe they're weekend warriors doing shows, maybe they're hitting the flea markets and they're hitting the garage sales and they're, what share and as you said, we always go for win-win. We want both sides to be happy, but what's a negotiation tactic that does not violate that principle?
I mean, like any conversation, you want to ask open-ended questions. Like, what are you trying to do? What would you like to do with these? I mean, if it's not easy to understand, if it's you're running into a friend's friend or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
are they trying to consign them? Are they just trying to sell a few, or that sort of thing? Sometimes buying in volume, it's a win-win for both of you because
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to, rustle up some money and you're trying to get a good deal. So like you
Right.
said, you help each other. You drag out, the cream with the rest of it.
Right.
And so volume can be a huge tool. And again, it contributes to the win-win because they're getting rid of some bulk and you get a great deal. Some it's I should probably stick to that. Volume is a good deal. It's going to take work like anything else.
Right. Right.
And building relationships. I know guys who've been doing this for a long time, like you, who hustle and like you, and they have things sold before they buy them. Why?
It's always a
Because,
beautiful thing, right? Yeah.
well, like you like Mickey and Snoopy,
Sure.
right?
Right.
And so if I'm out and I find a Mickey or Snoopy I've never seen before, I know you're probably going to want it.
Right.
And I mean, that's maybe a bad example, but people have a Rolodex in their head.
Oh yeah.
And I can name some of them that even at
Mm-hmm.
the shows, they're walking around. They know what you like. They know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
They keep that in their head.
Right.
And as soon as they see it, they know it's sold. They just need
Correct.
to get a good deal on it
Yeah.
because, Joe or whomever really wants this car.
Yeah, and that makes your life easier as a buyer if you know, and it's no different than comping cards. If you're looking at a
Absolutely.
collection that's partially raw cards, partially graded cards, and you can comp out all the graded cards, and you go, well, I know I can resell these for $2,000, and they want, say, 3 for everything. You're like, okay, I know I can get a huge chunk back right here.
Right.
And so whether that means you've got it sold to XYZ individual, or here's market price, I can
Right.
get it. And so when you're buying all raw, that's a lot tougher.
It is tough.
And so buying vintage, I often do a per card. I'll pull the cream, run a number on that, and then I'm like, and then for all the rest, I'll go this much per card across the board because I know that stuff's going to sit here and sit here.
Sure.
And yes, we're going to sell some over time, but there's no quick flip to vintage commons.
Right.
It's just, it's the long, you've got to price them out, gauge the condition and so forth. So other avenues besides garage sales, flea markets, card shows to buy collections.
I mean, I think the
Facebook Marketplace.
Yes, the young people are running circles around me because they're digitally accessing collections, when I'm not. So I've got to broaden my horizons when it comes to, acquisitions and finding things for sure. So that's something that is worth exploring, all those avenues.
Yeah. I have often said if I had the funds to do it, I'd love to have somebody here and their whole focus was just being a buyer or just sniffing out those collections for us, you know. So speaking of, I'm actually going to be, when I head up to Tennessee, to Nashville for that show, I'm going to be doing a buying road trip on the way. I'll be announcing that if someone has a collection to sell. And then I'll actually, before that in January, I'm headed up to Kentucky.
Oh, nice.
And I hope to make some stops to buy some stuff. So if you're between Atlanta and Middle Kentucky, I don't even remember what city I'm going to, but I do have a stop there. But I'm ready to buy that collection of So if you're in an antique store in that area and you have 800 T206s, let me know. And if I can't float it, I'll call Cleve up to share it with, split it with me, right? And so, any last tips and tricks you can think of?
No, I love to see the hobby that we love growing like gangbusters. It's fun to be participating in it, and I love our conversations. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Sure thing, yeah. I love that so many young collectors are getting in. It's
Absolutely.
great, and things that were not in demand 10 years ago now are highly sought after. You know, it was a big deal when suddenly golf cards were in demand and tennis cards were in demand, and now it's everything under the sun. It's Hello Kitty cards, and you name it, whatever. There is a buyer out there for it, and that's one of the things that makes this hobby still the greatest hobby on the face of the earth. So, thanks so much for coming out, Cleve. We'll definitely have you back again, and hope that we can hunt down some collections together in the near future.
Sounds great.
So thanks very much.
Jeff.
Uh-huh.